Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to do a time-lapse video of a watercolor and machine embroidery project. I think it is so much fun to watch the progress, and we're going to get started here. At this point, I've already done 2 steps. I loaded my hoop, stitched down my batting, removed the extra batting, and stitched down my top fabric, which this is a tea-stained muslin. And now I can begin painting. This is strictly watercolor paint right on the fabric. The fabric has been pre-washed. This is not permanent. These watercolors paints would wash out if you were to wash this, but I'm going to hoop this in a bamboo embroidery hoop when I am finished. So there's no chance of it getting washed at any point. I just thought I would bring you along and spark your creativity to think outside the box with your projects. Watercolor painting on fabric is so much fun. It's a little bit of a learning curve because the watercolors do tend to bleed out a little bit. And so you'll see me take my iron and a pressing cloth and dry the paint several times here and there just to set it, to stop the spread. And the cool thing about that is when the paint is dry, it absorbs hardly any more additional paint from the paint running or wicking into the fabric. So you'll see I'm painting in some green in this area here. This is the background area for the trees, and you can see it's not bleeding into the blue because the blue is dry. If you've never tried this, I would highly suggest, just when you have some free time and you feel a little creative, to break out the paints in your fabric and see what you think. So on this piece, I did the sky first, and then I'm just painting in a solid green background in the tree area. And then I'll come in and start doing some shadow parts, just to add some depth to the trees to make them look more realistic, more interesting to look at. This piece was inspired by a photograph that my mom took a few years ago. Her and my dad, they go out on day trips to do photography, and this was a picture she took down at Messick Point in Pocosin, Virginia, of a workboat. And I just love it. I've always loved that photograph, and with her permission, I digitized it in Brilliance. And let's see, I'm trying to think of the module I used. Stitch Artist Level 2 gave me all the functions to digitize this piece. And this is actually my 4th go around with this piece, and I believe this is the piece that I will put into my Maiden Matthews studio tour in the fall. So now I'm going to come in with some lighter yellows, different shades of yellow, and start adding some highlights to the trees and bushes and grassy area. I would say all of my years as a teenager following along Bob Ross really helped with this. But I would say you really don't have to be an artist. You can see most of the time I'm using the same exact brush to do everything, and just having fun with it. If you keep lots of the dark area in between the trees and the bushes, it adds a lot of depth. See that? And then, of course, I'll take my iron and just dry this really quickly. The watercolor only takes a couple minutes to dry. So using the iron really speeds up the whole process. And now I'll come in and start adding a base color for the water area. Now you'll see if you'll see some areas that are stitched. It looks like they're quilted. That was digitized in there to give me reference points. You'll see the blue paint is sticking to the thread in some areas here. Those are just reference points that I programmed in the digitizing because I want to be able to know where I should add some shadows in the paint before I start stitching everything that comes after the painting is done. This piece really has just inspired me just to get more back into painting and being more creative in a mixed media type of way. I've really missed it, and I've sort of just gotten away from it since the move. But this piece has really sparked a whole bunch of different ideas, and it seems like there's not enough time in a day to do all the things that I want to do. So you'll see where those little quilted areas were, I went in and added some shadows. What's going to go over top of these areas are a dock and a workboat. And now I can just start adding some movement in the water. In my mom's original photo, I'll put it up here on the screen for you. There's lots of movement with the water, and I really wanted to capture that somehow. And I'll just dry that. The important part is you'll see my piece is still in the embroidery hoop. And you just have to be careful when doing this that you're not shifting the piece as you're drying it, right? You don't want to mess up any of the registrations or distort that fabric in any way so that everything stitches out where it's supposed to. And now we're at the embroidery machine, and I'm going to just bring you in little bits and pieces here and there as I stitch this out. The first thing that I stitched was the different areas of the dock. And I do go through and change the thread colors here and there just to add some interest to the dock. Some I used a lighter brown, a medium brown, and a darker brown for the different areas of the dock. And again, all of this was digitized in Brilliance Stitch Artist Level 2, which was so much fun. I'm actually thinking about doing this piece here as a workshop, maybe on Patreon. The only thing about this piece here is you need a hoop that is at least 9 inches by 9 inches because this finished piece measures 8.5 by 8.5 inches. And you'll see the little light area that I painted it in the tree area. I forgot to do that while I was filming. So after I realized it, before I started stitching, I did go in and lighten up. There was a little quilted area right towards the bottom in the middle of the piece, and you can see it right here. That's where the glass is going to be on the boat, and I wanted it to be a little bit lighter so that it looks like glass. So I did that off camera because I forgot to do it while I was filming. So the dock area is done, and I'm going to go in and start doing all of the details of the boat. And the thing to remember when digitizing a piece like this is you're working from the bottom layer to the top. So you want to digitize things that will be stitched over top of first, and then, you know, work your way to the top of the piece. It's a little hard to watch this as it's sped up, but it's also really interesting though. So So now you can see that dark area in the water. That's the shadow underneath the boat, the shadow in the water. And you can see the other two dark places. Those were shadows underneath of the dock. That's really hard to watch. This is sped up at 7 times faster so that we're not here for a really long time. To be honest, this video is just to start sparking your imagination, to start thinking about using different kinds of paint on fabric and mix it up with some quilting or some embroidery and just have fun with it. This watercolor paint dries super soft to the touch, so it's not a very sharp tooth on the fabric. Sometimes using acrylic paints, even with a fabric medium, the fabric can be a little bit sharp and cut the thread. But this watercolor paint, and that's the reason why I chose to use it, is super soft to the touch. And I did not have one entire single thread break the entire time I stitched this piece. And this piece took 47 minutes to stitch. That was stitching time. That didn't include stopping to change all of the colors. And I even used some metallic thread here in just a little bit in the water. No thread breaks. I think this is the funnest part of this piece as it's stitching out, is when it's doing all of the rope details on the workboat. That's when it really starts to look like a workboat. Do you know what I'm saying? So now just a couple little more details. I've switched over to a metallic thread, and I digitized some little squiggle lines in the water. And it's hard to see in the video, but in person, when you move this in the light, the metallic thread catches your eye and glimmers, and it's just another design element that sort of makes this piece pop. So here we go. Even here, it's a little hard to see that metallic thread, but this has been so much fun. At this point, I have put it in a bamboo hoop that I painted, and my piece is finished. I did go in and add a little bit of more detailed trunks to the trees, and I painted a little tiny bird up in the top. I hope that this has inspired you to get creative. If you'd like to know more, leave a comment down in the description box below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye.